Sorry, thanks Ron. To finish off our session, we have a two-part, to finish off our session we have a two-parter with Julie Barratt and Monica Oppen. So Julie Barratt, you might have known, used to have the wonderful Barratt Galleries and is now in Fremantle. And Monica Oppen, who I think has the biggest private collection of artist books in Australia, I guess, yeah, which is very accessible by appointment. There you go. Good luck.
Thanks, Karen. Okay. And Monica's doing the clicker. This is a real collaboration this morning. It's so lovely to be here on Yui Country. Thank you so much for having us, and it's wonderful to be here to talk about this collaboration that I worked on with Monica and Anne Twig, who I'm met this time for the first time on this visit. So that's really lovely. So we spoke about starting this project at the Abbey Conference in 2017. So we've kind of been working on it ever since, and it's a delight to be showing it in the Libris Awards this weekend. So I'm going to talk really briefly about the history of mail art and a few of the projects that I worked on that led to our collaboration. So I'm just going to read because I've got 5 minutes, probably 4 now. Mail art is an artistic movement based on the simple act of sending art back and forth through the mail. It is often an emotional exchange, a collage of thoughts, moods, or socio-political reactions. Mail art embraces participation and accessibility and collaboration. This ethos also deeply informs the history and practice of the artist book, particularly the kind of small press, handmade and distributed works that resist institutional boundaries. It emerged in the 60s and was deeply influenced by Fluxus. The Fluxus movement believed anyone could be an artist and anyone could participate. It was an art movement that also, at its core, I don't know why I'm so nervous, challenged the arts world's hierarchies. Fluxus artists emphasised the process over the finished product and were interested in fostering a spirit of collaboration. Mail art has at its heart these same principles. The beginning of mail art is often attributed to Ray Johnson, whose New York correspondence school in the 60s is considered the beginning of the mail art movement. Johnson invited artists to submit work by mail, sparking a global network of creative exchange. Johnson used mailing lists and encouraged recipients of the art to forward, respond to, or alter what they received. The spirit of the project lives on in artist networks like IOMA. The International Union of Mail Artists was founded in 1988 and formalised a global network of mail artists. With the rise of the internet, they launched an online platform in 2008, which continues to be really active today. Even as practices moved online, the mail art ethos, physical, participatory, and distributed through the mail system, remains strong, much like artist books in the digital age, which continue to find new relevance through zines and hybrid analog digital publishing models. So now I'll talk about a few of the projects in Australia. So Field Study started in 1993 and still goes to the present day. It began in London in 1993, was founded by David Della Fiora, Benedict Phillips and Eamon Kerwin, 3 unemployed artists with an ironic take on the art world. They were not interested in producing product for a market, and this was behind the motivation to form what has become an ongoing international mail art platform. David later relocated Field Study to Geelong, aligning geographically with the cultural periphery that mail art has always inhabited. Field Study publishes exempling projects like Wipe, Recite and Cart, and invites anyone, regardless of background or practice, to contribute. The next project is the US-Australia Mail Art Project. This was started in 2009. It was initiated by Tara O'Brien, an artist from the USA, and brought together 6 artists, 3 from the US and 3 from Australia. Tara visited Australia in 2009 to judge the Southern Cross Acquisitive Artist Book Award in Lismore, and at that time that was held at my gallery in Alstonville. At the time, she connected with local artists Heather Matthew and Babette Angel and invited them to participate in the project. So in that project, each artist took turns choosing a book format and theme. Participants created an edition of 6 and mailed 5 to the others. This 2-year exchange culminated in the 2012 US exhibition Postal Pinacotheca, which showcased the collaborative and disciplined potential of mail art. The next project was a hanky project in 2010, and I think there's a few artists here that participated in that one. So this project was born from my own personal loss and grief, and it invited artists to mail in artworks made on handkerchiefs, an object commonly associated with mourning and grief. The result was a deeply emotional collection of, I think we had over 150 pieces from 12 countries. Speaking of loss, of remembrance, of grief, of enduring the death of a loved one. Exhibited in Alstonville in New South Wales and later in Melbourne, the project stitched together a global conversation on death and healing. And here's a quote from one of the artists. Men's hankies with blue or brown borders, large, small lace hankies, delicate, cheap hankies, functional, hand-stitched and embroidered, plain, packets of 6, unfurled in pockets, they are handled and handled, like worry beads, like blankies. They are stiff with salt, they sop up, they stem the abject overflow. And the last project I'll talk about is a book about death, the Australian edition in 2013. So this project was originally curated by Matthew Rose, who's a Paris-based American artist in 2009. A book about death invited artists from around the world to contribute 500 postcard-sized works, each artist, and together they then formed an unbound book. In the 2013 Australian edition, which Heather Matthews, who's here today, and I curated, continued this open submission model. Over 300 artists participated. Each postcard was both a page and a standalone artwork, an artist book in dispersed form sent and received through the post, and this was exhibited at Tweed Regional Gallery. In conclusion, mail art's continued vibrancy mirrors that of the artist's book. Both of forms can be formats of resistance, of personal storytelling, of handmade thought. They're not just objects, they're gestures, stories folded into envelopes, ideas stitched or glued by hand, ink smudged by fingertips. They just arrive quietly, insistently in mailboxes, and that's the best part. Mail day was always my favourite day, and still is. Over to you, Monica.
In 2017, Anne, Julie and I were in Brisbane for the Abbey Conference. It was drawing to a close. Soon we would be leaving for 3 different locations, thousands of kilometres apart. I suggested we stay in touch with a mail art project. I'd been in Germany visiting Ute Schneider, and she'd shown me a set of cards and ongoing correspondence with an artist friend. I remembered this project that last afternoon in Brisbane. It wouldn't be a mail art project in the traditional sense, but rather a correspondence through colour, image, and ideas. This image shows our system of exchange. It was easier to explain through a diagram. We all ended up with a stack of our own cards returned rather than the correspondence cards. That's probably the more unusual aspect of this project. The key guidelines for project longevity were restricting the artwork to the size of a postcard. No additioning was required. No time constraints were in answering. There was no end goal. Other guidelines were the card had to be sent through the postal system, partly to slow everything down. The card could be worked on both sides and any medium was permissible. To keep the interchange a dialogue, you had to respond to an element in the card that you received. It could be a colour, and it could be an idea or a texture or a pattern. You could also work back into the card you had received, adding to it. Projects that we are currently working on current political topics, say border control, nationhood, environment, all creep into the cards in various ways. The correspondence ran its course, and here are some quotes that I recorded just recently as our sort of response to that correspondence. The last cards were exchanged between Anne and myself in the in the early months of 2024, or perhaps it was the last months of 2023. I actually don't remember. And so, yeah, these comments are reminiscences of that. Even though there had never been an end project in mind, we were all curious about bringing the cards together to gather them. Entry to the Libris Award became that lacking end point. So there it is, ready to go. Bringing the cards together, making the work. Bringing the cards together was very stressful. We each all had only numbered the first few cards, and then the numbers fell away. Even fewer cards had dates. There were very few clear markers to hold the sequence in a particular order. The narrative thread had always been very open. It could switch from theme, the rights of asylum seekers, to a colour, red, or from a colour blue to a texture, weaving. Although Anne and I had kept our cards in order, Julie hadn't. Ordering Julie's cards into mine and Anne's had me looking for other systems of connection. For example, I recognised my own additions in Julie's cards. There were themes running through the cards which I recalled. There were cards that I'd never seen before, which must have been the correspondence between Anne and Julie. But then again, there were also cards, when I looked through my boxes, my own cards, which I didn't even remember. As I struggled to keep everything as much as possible in order, because I wanted to get it right, I wondered, did it really matter? So building the structure. With all the cards in my possession, I began to wonder about how I'd put them together. Pinning them to the gallery wall was out of the question because all the cards had been worked on both sides. My starting point was Ben Elbell's album, which has pages that you can slot in and out. But I had to abandon this structure. The cards had to be fixed because they belonged in a particular order. And I had to keep reminding myself there were a lot of cards. At the beginning of the project, and also at the beginning of the project, the cards had only varied very slightly in size, but they'd become larger and more erratic as the years had passed. So a structure that required a consistent object size was out. Then I sketched designs for a box that could hold the cards, but then again, the number of the cards made me abandon this design. I don't actually have the drawing anymore. There had to be flexibility in the structure, and the answer came with 3 ready-made objects: plywood boards, carbon fibre rods, and slide clips. Thank you, Officeworks. So here's the finished work. There were 3 lines of correspondence possible. We all started by sending both of the others a card. However, the 2 lines fell away between Julie and Anne because cards were lost in the post and there had been long gaps between the posting. So this is recorded only in 1 line. So you can see there's Julie and there's Anne and my cards, and there's Julie and Anne's cards at the back. The slide clips had an inner width of 4 millimetres and could easily fit around the 3 millimetre diameter of the carbon fibre rod. I calculated space for 31 holes across the length of the plywood boards. The cards needed enough space to be able to turn without actually obstructing each other. At first, the structure, I thought the structure would be easy to take apart and reconstruct, but as I built it, I realised this was not going to be the case. The rods were 1 metre long and everything had to be threaded on, not just the cards, but also the intermediate plywood boards, which were partitioning, separating the correspondence lines, but also structurally important. Bringing the cards together has been an interesting process. A new work has been made. How successful it is, I'm still not sure. My memory still holds on to the mail out process, the creating, posting and receiving in return of the cards. In the new work, the weight of absence, time has been squashed out. The years of correspondence are compacted into a matter of seconds. Thousands of kilometres of distance have shrunk down to a few millimetres. The topics which stretched over months flash by, barely perceptible. I like the title coined by Julie because it echoes with these ambiguities. Does absence have weight? The word weight to me has always suggested heaviness, but it could also refer to lightness. Perhaps the work could be subtitled The Unbearable Lightness of Being Apart. The absence created by the distance between us, which was bridged by the correspondence, is now compressed into an intense presence of the cards collected and wrapped in a way that they have never been before. They have the weight that was previously absent. A new type of space and book type has been created. Like a real exhibition, you can wander around. Reading the work doesn't have to be strictly linear. It's definitely not from left from right or from right to left, so not traditional reading, but more from bottom to top. But it could equally be diagonally across. The pages can be opened anywhere in any order. Such a reading breaks with the ordered process of sending the cards back and forth, and them travelling between specific locations and people. But it also echoes with freewheeling, open-ended subject matter, the use of multimedia, and the meandering, non-specific stream of conscious narrative. I'd like to thank you for listening, and I wanted to have special thanks to David Delafiora, Heather Matthew, and Anne-Marie Hunter, who helped with the information for this talk. Thank you.
Because we've gone a bit over time, I think we might abandon the Q&A, and I encourage you all to talk to the artists during the morning tea, and also I think they're all going to be in the book fair, behind their tables, pinned down,